What is this? We got an awesome show for you today, Power Panel. Seek the Lord. Drop it.
Arthur lit the house on fire with that intro. Okay.
Look at his.
Okay. Now, that was Arthur playing the role of Cenk, even though I'm back.
Yeah.
So you guys should have been doing that while I was gone.
No. Yeah, next week.
Yes. Okay. So I am ecstatic to be back. I love being in the studio. I have learned many things on my travels. I feel like I'm Marco Polo. Okay. And I will tell you guys most of the things that I have learned in post games for the members only. Okay. Now, I don't mean to keep that from the general public or anything like that. If it's relevant to a story, obviously I'll talk about it, right? But I'm just saying, like, what I learned in Washington and then what I learned in New York, which are totally separate. One is about politics, the other one's about industry and media and digital landscape and all those different things. And I still haven't told you guys the story of how I got when I got hired the last time in Vegas, and then ran into a relatively famous person, which was kind of awkward. Ooh. Okay, so all of that is going to be in the members only post games going forward next week. Okay, so I've got that all. That's a long tease, but anyway. That's tytnetwork.com/join, tytnetwork.com/join. And by the way, shout out to Jane, my Uber driver from the airport today, because she's a member. Okay.
Oh!
So my boss.
Did you freak out?
My boss.
Don't freak out.
Don't freak out. You made a shirt out of it. That's
That's an awesome shirt.
Okay. I like how you're playing it up by doing
No big deal.
Okay, what are you doing? Are you selling it somewhere or what?
Yeah, it's for my Indiegogo.
Oh, it is? Okay. Well, tell people where to go for that.
If you go to jimmydorecomedy.com, you click right on the link there, and if you buy one of these or donate, you'll get one of these for my Indiegogo for my new
jimmydorecomedy.com. Okay, got you. Okay, so as I was saying, my boss drove me home today. So and as I think I mentioned this in a Facebook Live. I might have mentioned it to you guys when I Skyped in. One of the guys at the very fancy galas in D.C., one of the security guards gives $10 a month of Wolfpack, right? And that was awesome. I love that, man. Nobody in that room full of millionaires gives anything to get money out of politics, but the security guards give it.
We're like Fight Club.
Okay, we are.
We've got people inside.
No, but you have no idea, man. Here's who watches our show: security guards, Uber drivers. Waiters, waitresses, okay, like, people who work for a living, okay, people who work, right? And so whenever I go to these fancy places, whether it's super famous people on TV or, in the case of New York this week, super famous people on YouTube, right? So those, the YouTube stars, all of them, they're all gigantic, right? They all have like 10 million subscribers apiece, yada,
Hello,
yada.
YouTubers.
Yeah, the young guys, right? The young guys and girls. So they have giant fans. So when you go, I walked the red carpet with those guys, and I got a couple of, oh, Cenk, how you doing? Let's take a picture. They come on, and it's like, right? Okay, so when they are going somewhere, their fans are much bigger. I'm keeping it super real, okay? But on the streets, I get recognized more, right? Because you got to be into gaming, or you got to be into beauty and fashion, or you got to be into makeup to know them, right? But everybody knows us. So, and so that's kind of cool. So as we were talking about that one day in New York, a woman walks by with a TYT bag. Right? We don't even sell TYT bags. I don't know how she got that. Right? It's the things that we have for the swag bags,
Oh,
Yeah.
I actually have one of those.
So does someone in New York that I didn't recognize at all.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I don't have a website where I sell unauthorized merchandise.
Okay. ShopTYT.com. Everybody missed out on Breaking Bank, right? So that's gone.
We announced it.
Hey,
we gave him a warning.
Hey, Seuss, real quick. But do we still have Bernie So Punk? Because, we do. Okay, somebody on Twitter was panicking, saying, I can't get that on ShopTYT.com. But no, you can't get Breaking Bank. We told you that. We told you it was limited time offer. You fucked up. Okay, you just got to live with
It's
that.
broken.
But you can get Bernie So Punk, which is actually great. And somebody, the reason I bring it up, last thing, we really got to do stories. But anyway, I'll save the rest for like I said, the post game for the members. Some guy sent me a picture on Twitter of him talking to Bernie Sanders at one of his events and showing him the Bernie Punk T-shirt that we have, right?
Yeah.
And Bernie's like, "Oh, that looks good." I can't tell. This is what his face looked like, and I tweeted that out. Anyways, shop TYT.com for that.
By the way, people are going to see, we used this master yesterday. We've got another Trump story involving money with him as the doughboy. I want that as a shirt.
Yeah, Jesus and I are having
do
similar
that.
conversations.
Hey,
about
but
that.
speaking of getting recognized from the Young Turks, everyone does know the Young Turks. I don't know if this happens each time, but I was at the Turner Classic Movie Festival last weekend, and the first night there, I went to the pool by the Roosevelt because Ben was interviewing Batman, and I got recognized 3 times. Once by someone who I didn't know.
Okay, good on you, Jimmy. Okay. Well, don't worry. They recognize you in Washington. As I told you off the air, a couple people with comments about Jimmy. They're not too happy about your commentary.
That's the way I like it, baby. I'm an outsider.
All right. Okay, let's get going. We got a lot of stories for you guys.
Let's get going. Very serious news. Sorry, but it's happening. A massive wildfire has engulfed parts of Fort McMurray in northern Alberta, destroying well over 1,600 structures as of yesterday. I don't have an updated count for you today, but the devastation has been beyond the bounds of language in a lot of ways. The fire, which started Sunday, has torched at least 1,010 square kilometers, up from just 850 square kilometers the day before. A blaze of that size is larger than Singapore, bigger than Chicago and Boston combined.
Wow.
Wow.
This is the largest wildfire. It has been going on for a few days, forcing Fort McMurray to be fully evacuated. Over 80,000 people being forced to leave, including one massive 1,500-car convoy, which we'll talk about a little bit later on.
Wow.
But before we return to this fire, it isn't even the only wildfire going on in Alberta right now. There are 49 wildfires in Alberta currently, with 7 considered out of control.
Wow.
More than 1,100 firefighters, 145 helicopters, and 22 air tankers are currently battling the blazes.
So that appears to be one that is out of control.
Yes, it's...
Imagine how scared you'd be if you're in that convoy and you're driving through that smoke and fire. I mean, the fire is upon you, man. Wow. In fact, the fire chief of regional municipality of Wood Buffalo, his name is Darby Allen, said, and I like this quote, that's why I'm reading it to you, "The beast is still up. It's surrounded the city, and we're here doing our very best for you."
Yeah.
And as you look at those pictures in that video, you realize it is a beast. Here's another amazing fact I found out about Alberta because of this story. It turns out there's only 88,000 people living in a place the size of Singapore, right? So it is a massive, massive area that is on fire, but not a lot of people live there, which is, in this case, good because they only had to evacuate 88,000 people. Seems like they have done so relatively safely. Wow. And they're doing amazing work up there fighting that fire. And only 1,600 homes in that region, but of the ones that have been destroyed, I should say. 1,600
entire
destroyed.
neighborhoods in some cases have been destroyed.
Yeah. And imagine that thing's coming up on your house. And so
quicker than you would imagine that it would. And yeah, we told you about the one big convoy, and there's quotes from people involved in it saying, "We're just going over these hills, no idea what's going to be on the other side, hoping that the cars in the front, the leadership position, are making the right decisions, because if not, they're leading us to our death, because it could sweep across the road, and you don't know."
And they had to use helicopters to evacuate others that were trapped within the fire. You see that thing barreling down towards your house, you got to grab whatever you can and get in your car and go. And it's moving fast. And it's amazing that there are normally 49 fires. Like, they're not worried about the 42 other fires, but 7 right now that are out of control, including the one covering a place the size of Singapore.
It looks like something out of a movie. It doesn't look real.
Yeah.
And so what are they using to fight that? Socialism?
Yes, Jimmy,
Apparently,
they are.
yes, actually.
It's the fire departments are run by the government, and they're not privatized, so that would be part of a socialist system.
I think that the 88,000 people should just individually have accounts with a fire department, And then they go around and they hose down the buildings that have paid that month. And you just have like an app or something where you check to see if that's the one that's paid.
Now, I get that you guys are making a nice, smart-ass comment about socialism, but remember the fire's out of control.
No, but
That's also true.
Well, that's why we should privatize the fire, and then we can maybe make some money off it.
So we do have an update on what might happen with this particular one. Officials said today that they expect that winds are going to push the fire away from populated areas, but the fire manager, Chad Morrison, says he expects the fire to continue to burn for weeks and weeks in heavily forested but unpopulated areas. And of course, they don't know exactly what caused this. It could have been a person, it could have been lightning, but they believe, a lot of people believe, and I think it's very reasonable to believe, that climate change is contributing to this because the parts of Canada are far warmer than they have any right to be at this time of year. That area is far drier than it would have been in previous years. And so there are huge areas of Canada that are just waiting for something like this. And not just Canada, the U.S. as well. Parts of California are far drier than they would have been in previous years, let alone previous decades. And this is the sort of thing that we're going to see more often, that you can't instantly look at it and say, oh, climate change caused this, like a gigantic hurricane. But the conditions have been set, at least in part, through climate change.
So I want to clarify a couple of things there, because people are then going to go, "Oh, Mike, you think climate change caused a fire?" Well, there's fires all the time. Yes, you're right about that. And there might have been 49 fires without climate change anyway, or there might have been 45 because it's drier than it normally is, and you have a couple more fires that might happen because of the dryness. But that's not important. Let's say there would have been 49 fires anyway, right? The question is, how quick did they spread? Because with the storms get more severe. Because of climate change. Not that climate change didn't create storms. See, I'm just explaining that, and I know I'm explaining it in an overly simplistic way, but a lot of people are even more simplistic. They're like, "Well, there was always fire, there was always storms," right?
Yeah.
And so, yes, there's always been fires, and so to me, it's a little immaterial whether it was a cigarette or it was a lightning strike, because as terrible as it is if it was man-made and that it was a cigarette and it was negligence, and don't do that, and because it turns out if you have 48 fires, maybe that one fire would have been this one, so don't do the cigarettes in the woods. But, yes, lightning strikes will happen. And if the conditions are set for something like this to happen, and there's a good point to be made that the conditions get set for catastrophic events like this because of climate change, then at some point, if it isn't a cigarette butt, it's going to be a lightning strike. And it's going to rage like this anyway. So this we're covering more, honestly, and everybody else in the media is covering it more. And part of the reason the media is covering it more is because the fire looks amazing. Keep it real.
And the scale.
Nice pictures.
Yeah, they care about the video, right? That's why it's all over TV today. The other reason is it's close to us. Whereas when there is a giant typhoon in Asia, and there's yet another flood in Bangladesh, but now there's a lot more floods than there used to be in a place where there's plenty of floods already.
Yeah.
I'm not in Bangladesh. I don't cover that. That's their problem, not my problem. The Arctic ice is melting, but I can't see them unless I'm Sarah Palin, looking at Russia from my porch, and I happen to see the Arctic ice caps as well, right? So, but now this is our problem, right? Another reason why people are super concerned is Alberta has the third largest oil reserve in the world. So Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, then Alberta. So people are like, whoa, wait, did it get near the oil? Did it get near the oil? And so far it hasn't. So people are like, oh, okay. I thought it was going to be relevant for a second. Right? Because, of course, then it would touch the money, which ironically might have been part of the contributing cost to this in the first place because of all of the efforts to get that oil out of the ground and use it, which led to climate change, which leads sometimes to fires like this.
So you're saying that climate change made it drier?
So that's why I say my description, Jimmy, is overly simplistic. Because there are a lot of contributing factors, and you'd have to talk to a person whose expertise is in this to say
climatologist,
for example, or in this case, it might be a fire expert who tells us whether it was particularly dry in Alberta, and if the warmer weathers in Alberta cause it to be more dry, or just the fact that it's hotter there leads to the fire growing further.
I mean, we've talked previously about like the permafrost at the extreme northern areas. It's not what it was decades ago, which is causing damage to structures. It's causing differences in animals' abilities to move from one area to another. It's not inconceivable that as you move, more towards the equator, there could be different effects, but similar in style at the very least.
And so just one last note of caution in talking about this. Look, it's nearly impossible to ascribe any one storm or catastrophic event like this to climate change. But when you look at the macro picture, you get a better sense of it. You go, okay, here are the number of floods that happened before man-made climate change got to this level, and this level, and this level, and here they are today, right? And in cases like this, number of acres burned across the world, 10 years ago versus today, and then that gives you a better sense of, I see how the overall climate is affecting the severity of these events across the world.
Yeah. And ironically, gigantic fires like this, lots of carbon emissions.
Oh.
That is ironic.
Right.
And vicious circle goes round and round.
Exactly.
Hope everybody in Alberta is
Yes.
safe.
Yeah.
And one last thing, credit to all the socialist firefighters that Jimmy was talking about there. 1,100 firefighters, 145 helicopters, 22 air tankers. They're all there. I'm sure there are many other parts of the Canadian government and others looking to volunteer and help. Because, yes, sometimes we got to work together. Like when there's a giant, giant fire, we can't try to fight it on our own. That's why you need government. You don't need government in every case, but in some cases, it helps to have an ability to work together to handle big problems like a fire the size of Singapore.
Yeah. Okay, let's turn to good news, except not just yet. We have some bad news for you, unfortunately. Over the past 24 hours, Maryland has suffered from a string of shooting incidents, but they do believe that they have caught the man responsible for at least a few of them. A suspect is in custody after shootings at 2 Maryland shopping centers 8 miles apart today, killed 2 people and injured 2 others. Authorities have arrested federal law enforcement officer Eulalio Tordil, who is 62 years old. It was this afternoon. He is suspected of killing his estranged wife in a high school parking lot yesterday. Now, a description of what went down today. Friday's violence started around 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time at the Westfield Montgomery Mall in Bethesda, where 2 males and 1 female were injured by gunshots in the parking lot. 1 male later died at the hospital. Another is in critical condition, and the female had non-life-threatening injuries. About 20 minutes after that shooting, police responded to more gunfire at a giant food supermarket at the Aspen Hill Shopping Center in Silver Spring, where a woman was fatally struck. And we believe from one of the police officers who was on the scene at the mall shooting, that initially there had been some sort of confrontation between the shooter and one individual. 2 others had intervened to try to help out, and were also hit by at least 1 bullet each. So as we said, the guy who's been caught, who we believe links these 3 shootings, although that's not guaranteed at this point, is a former employee, an employee at the Federal Protective Service. He was put on administrative duties back in March after a protective order was issued against him, Homeland Security officials told NBC News. He was later placed on administrative leave and required to surrender his government-issued weapons, badge, and credentials. Therefore, any weapons he may have used were obtained on his own.
Okay, so let's start to note the ironies in this story. He was with the Federal Protection Services, and they had to get a protective order against him, and that's before the shootings began. And so that's the thing about these guys who are unhinged, right? I'm sure that he was mad, and you could tell from the context of the story and what we know so far that his wife and family had put a protective order against him. So like all these madmen, they said, I'll show you that you don't need a protective order. I'll shoot you, right? And so thereby proving them right, unfortunately, and in this case, too late. So there's a second scary part of this story. So as John explained, the way that it goes is it appears he shoots his wife on Thursday night, and then in an unrelated set of shootings, except for the fact that he's wanted and he's on the run, he has this confrontation at a mall, shoots more people, and really sad part is people came to help, and he shot the guys coming in to help. So that sucks because it makes us all scared to help others.
Yeah. Right.
And so that's a devastating effect, unfortunately, of this. And then there's a third shooting later, because he's still not caught, third shooting, and they don't believe for the moment being, and obviously these stories in the first 24 hours always change some of the facts because it's really hard to get them on the fly. But for the moment being, they don't believe those 2 last shootings are related to his wife, other than the fact that he's on the run, right? And obviously unstable and unhinged.
Yeah.
So one of the things that's scary to me about this is, okay, now guys, everybody's got guns. We've talked about that a lot. Now they use them, not willy-nilly, but close. Some of them do. Not everybody does, but we live in a country of 300 million people. You don't need that many people to use them willy-nilly to cause a ton of trouble in every neck of the woods, including your neck of the woods. But now, like when the guy does the shooting and runs away, how are you going to catch him? Now he's on the loose, right? Mm-hmm. And now I feel like this is the second or third story we've done relatively recently where whether it's an active shooter, but more likely it's not even active. They go and then they just drive off and shoot someone else somewhere else. Now they're all roaming around, and now he's got nothing left to lose, right? Mm-hmm. And he's already used his gun. He's already killed somebody. So it's not just you go in America. Before we had this insane thing: you go into a school, you go into a movie theater, and you got to worry somebody's got a gun and they're going to shoot you all. Now you got to worry if there was a shooting in your neck of the woods yesterday. Did they catch him? If they didn't, well then you got to avoid everybody because you don't know who has the gun and the guy's on the loose.
Yeah.
So I mean, it reminds me of the story in Ohio with that family that was shot, right? And I think it was 8 different family members in different parts of town.
Like 3 different locations,
yeah. I mean, that smacked of some sort of issue about crime, and it looks like that there might have been some drugs involved in that. But again, everybody's got guns, so that was crime, and another one is terrorism, and this guy is mad at his wife, and the third guy's crazy, and on it goes. It's almost as if we shouldn't arm everyone in the country.
Yeah, but is it worth risking trying that? No country has ever just taken all the guns back. That would be crazy. Except Australia.
And there was no mass shootings afterwards.
Exactly. And look, all of that's true. Now, I guess it's admirable that both the police and then the media were able to find this pattern that, again, it could turn out was not actually, they were not all linked together, considering how many shootings happen in a state like Maryland or anywhere else in the U.S. Multiple shootings every single day. And that the police were able to track him down. It's obviously a tragedy that he was able to have 2 other incidents before they caught him. But considering that he just drove off in a place with millions and millions of people, within 24 hours, they caught him.
Yeah. Well,
it could have been much worse.
I guess credit to the police on that. And you're right, John. Most importantly, they really have a tough job in a situation like this. Because you're looking for a gunman, but everywhere in the country, it's nothing but gunmen.
Yeah.
How do you know which one is the crazy one? How do you know which one is carrying it legally or illegally when most of the places in the country have said you can just carry it around with a permit some places, without a permit in other places, hidden in some places, out in the open in some places. So it's like looking for a guy in a red sweater, and you turn around and everybody's got a red sweater on. Right?
Yeah, in this case, I'm sure that it was aided tragically by the fact that the first person who was killed had that protective order. Of course, that makes him the #1 suspect, and they'll begin looking for him. Even then, it will take time to find him. They did the right thing by having him surrender his weapons. We talked earlier this week about the fact that Connecticut is expected to sign a bill saying that if you are accused of domestic abuse, you'll surrender your weapon at that point. And this is a reminder that that is not a solution to the entirety of the problem. It's just intending to stop a certain fraction of those incidents from becoming fatal.
All right.
Yeah.
Another disaster in America.
Another disaster involving guns.
And just don't get surprised by the next one. So it'll happen, I was going to say next week, but probably over the weekend.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, there will be more shootings today.
Yeah, of course. There's countless shootings every day. Yeah. Now we only report it if it is a certain
multiple
threshold.
Locations.
Right, multiple locations. 8 different people in one family. It's got to have a twist. Like before, you'd report on shootings, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Then it became like shootings are so ordinary that you don't report on them anymore. Then it had to be a mass shooting. Now the mass shootings are so ordinary, they happen more than one a day, that it's got to have a twist.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, it's a mass shooting, but it's all one family. It's a mass shooting, but it's in 3 different places.
Oh, it's at a college campus.
It could be connected to ISIS or something like that.
Right. Okay, then we'll report on it.
Yeah.
That's the insane state of America today.
Yeah. Well, why don't we talk about some other insane aspects of America today?
Yes, and that would be Donald Trump. Yeah. This story is amazing!
Donald Trump has now threatened to let the U.S. government go bankrupt and let the U.S. economy collapse if it means that he might have an opportunity to make a better deal afterward. He said, "I am the king of debt. I love debt. I love playing with it." He said that to CNBC. He also loves bankruptcies, by the way, but he didn't mention that there. He then went on to say, "I would borrow, knowing that if the economy crashed, you could make a deal. And if the economy was good, it was good. So therefore, you can't lose. And I looked into America's past. Turns out you can't lose. We've never had a recession. We've never had a depression. The economy is always just heading on up. You can't lose.
Okay, so you said he didn't mention the bankruptcies, but in essence...
I mean, his history of bankruptcies specifically there.
Right,
but, of course,
but in
involved.
essence, he is saying that, right?
Yeah.
So when he says, I love playing with debt, he's referring to his history of doing that. And so what he means by that, in case you don't know, is so Donald Trump will take in a ton of debt to perhaps, like, for example, build a casino in Atlantic City. And if it works out, he makes a lot of money. Great. Okay, he wins. And if it doesn't work out, he goes, ha, idiot, you trusted me. You should have never trusted me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to pay you back. Now, the government lets him do this over and over again. That's why he's had 4 different companies go into bankruptcy. He's actually a terrible business person.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's what he means with, I love playing with debt. I mean, if they let you get away with it, you might love it too.
Yeah.
Right? You keep all the upside, but if you ever have any downside, you just leave it on other people. By the way, if you lend Donald Trump money, you are an
crazy person.
imbecile. Imbecile.
Yeah.
He's telling you right now, I plan on, if things go badly at all, stealing your money.
Yeah.
Just take it, put it in my pocket, and go, I'm bankrupt, sorry, you can't get it. And now he's planning to do that on a macro scale with all of our money.
He does not know anything about the U.S. economy. He doesn't know anything about the interconnections between our economy and the world economy. He learned nothing from the Great Recession. This should horrify you that he casually throws out basically an economically apocalyptic philosophy for how he would be president. And look, Vox did a great job of tying in his philosophy based on him being a businessman and showing how all that he thinks he's learned from the business world has absolutely nothing to do with how you actually run an economy. Here's a great summary part of it. Every assessment of risk in the financial system is based on the idea that the least risky thing is lending money to the federal government. If that turns out to be much riskier than previously thought, then everything else becomes much riskier too. Business investment will collapse, state and local finances will be crushed, and shockwaves will emanate to a whole range of foreign countries that borrow dollars. And Matthew Iglesias, who, by the way, I often disagree with wholeheartedly on most of his articles, does a great job here. He ties it back to 2008, saying, remember 2008, when the markets went from thinking housing debt was low risk to thinking it was high risk, and a global financial crisis was the result? This would be like that, but much worse. U.S. government debt is the very foundation of low-risk investments.
So what he's basically saying is that he can't wait to fiscal cliff it. This thing that everyone is afraid of and everyone knows now, and that they even back down from doing, that we can't do because it would lead to collapse. He apparently wasn't paying attention during that. When that
this
happened.
Is Ted Cruz shit.
This is worse than that.
This is worse than that, yeah. And this is, look, one of the things we've been, I think, most worried about over the past few years, since basically the response to the Great Recession and what Obama did and didn't do to try to fix the system, was that they didn't do enough to stop us from going over the cliff again. That they made only these incremental changes, and it's not enough to potentially stop us. He's saying, I'm steering the car right towards that, because I'll bounce back from it the way that I always have with my businesses. Except that that's not at all how it works. This not only could destroy our economy, but it could destroy any number of other economies throughout the world.
And here's another thing that, so the reason why the banks are too big to fail, or that the big banks in America even make money anymore, it's because they have the implicit subsidy from the government that we're going to bail you out. That's why they get a lower rate on their money, and that's why they're allowed to be profitable. That's why Wall Street's profitable, because it's a certain form of welfare that they get, and on the tune of billions and billions of dollars. So just imagine that he's going to... maybe this guy is reckless.
Okay, so we laugh about it now, but if he becomes president...
this stuff will happen all the time.
No, in fact, if he gets anywhere near Hillary Clinton close enough to the election, this will have enormous ramifications throughout the country.
Even before he becomes president.
Even before he becomes president. So let me explain. So Matt did do a great job in this article of going through all the different intricacies and explaining how it affects liquidity and used examples, etc. But I think even he underplays it, and even you guys are underplaying it in explaining it. So let me try to explain why this matters, even if he doesn't become president. Okay, so look, the whole world economy is based on the dollar. Maybe it shouldn't be, and there's very good reasons why we should have a more stable system, certainly a more stable banking system. Oil is traded in the dollar, and it brings stability to the world. And the reason why our interest rates are low is because people have a lot of trust in the dollar. Because they go, okay, look, the Federal Reserve might have its issues, the American government might have its issues. It's got a big deficit and a lot of debt, but the Japanese are in worse shape, right? The Chinese have even bigger issues. We'll wait till you get a load of the Saudis, and the Eurozone has Greece and all the other problems that it has. So the dollar is a safe harbor. If this madman says the dollar is no longer a safe harbor, and I might at some point declare bankruptcy for the United States of America, that will send a panic through the markets like you've never seen before. Because that means nothing is safe. Okay, so if nothing is safe, you as a smart and prudent investor, you must, and they all will, this is not optional, then take that into account in how you do business. So you go, okay, well, I'm going to require a higher interest rate from the U.S. government if I think that it is riskier. And if the president or the guy who might become president is telling me that he might default on the dollar, okay, then I've got to charge you a higher interest rate. I'm only charging you a small, very small interest rate because I thought it was rock solid. Now you just told me it isn't rock solid. Now, when they charge a higher interest rate, deficit goes up. By the way, as Matt explains, your mortgages go up because everybody's interest goes up. But then the state and local government's interest goes up. It makes it harder to pay everything. You might have also created inflation, but you've started a cycle you cannot undo. So if Donald Trump is anywhere near close to Hillary Clinton in polling, anywhere near the election, right? It hasn't happened yet because he just said this, and he's not that close to her yet. I know there's some polling, and we're not that close to the election yet. Okay, we haven't even gotten to the primaries, etc. Well, you're 2 months out, 3 months out, and he's tied with Hillary Clinton as an example. Well, the markets have to take this into account.
Yeah, they can't wait until he does it.
If he does it, it's already too late. They've got to adjust the interest rates based on that.
Yeah.
And then once that happens to the dollar, it then happens to all the currencies because it all comes back to the dollar. There, I'm oversimplifying, okay? But it is absolutely true that it will create not a little, a massive ripple effect throughout the world. This endangers the entire global economy. Now, this is amazing. He got much worse than I suspected. And by the way, this will lead to a lot of people changing their minds, and a lot of people on Wall Street, a lot of the business leaders, they will panic and go over to Hillary Clinton, okay? I'm telling you that right now because no business leader reads this and goes, oh, it'll be fine. They read this and go, oh, no, I didn't. What? You can't do that? Are you insane? And the other part of this is, how could he not know that? How could he be running for president? And he's got the Republican nomination now.
Zero intellectual curiosity combined with believing that he already knows everything he needs to know.
He doesn't know the most fundamental things about the world economy. He is a buffoon. All he got was $40 million from his daddy. He bankrupted all his companies, Trump. All he knows is marketing. Yes, he's good at marketing, right? That's what's gotten him to this point. And he makes all of his money from putting Trump on the buildings. You know, he doesn't even, at
Buildings
this point,
other people make.
Yeah, at this point, people don't trust him with money. He doesn't build anything. He sells his name so somebody else builds the building and puts Trump on it, right? That's how he makes all his money. He doesn't know anything about business, okay? In the financial industry in New York, he's largely considered a joke. And this joke has taken over one of the major parties, stands some chance of winning the presidency now, and has, even before getting anywhere near the Oval Office, already endangered us all.
So, you know what, Cenk? You've convinced me that Donald Trump is dangerous. And I think the responsible thing to do is make sure he doesn't get in the White House, and that's why I'm voting for the senator that's polling way ahead of Donald Trump. I'm going to vote for Bernie Sanders because this is serious. I'm going to have to fucking I'm going to stick with him.
Okay.
This is all the more reason that so long as there's any chance whatsoever, we need to maximize that chance.
Yes.
Because Hillary still offers up the possibility that something like this could inadvertently happen. He guarantees that that's his strategy.
So, guys, you're never going to talk sense into the Washington establishment, okay? So, look, this story is super important, whether, without involving Hillary or Bernie, okay? Now, to your secondary point about Hillary or Bernie, Jimmy, look, yes, Bernie's way out in front of Trump. Double-digit lead still in most of the polls. And in the last 2 polls I saw, she's leading by 2, and she's tied. Okay, it should give you a heart attack.
That should give you, yes.
Okay, if you're a
Yes.
Democrat, it should give you a heart attack. And now, if you're a global citizen, if you're sitting there in Germany, you should be panicked.
A person who's never heard of Donald Trump, their life could be ruined if he gets close to being the president.
And so this is what I don't understand, and I've been saying this to people. It's like, well, how come the donor class isn't more upset with the Democratic Party for serving up such a bad candidate? Someone, the second most disliked politician in the country, that's who they give us against why? So that's what how did they
I think I know why. Because they always get rich under those people.
That's
As
right.
it pushes us closer and closer to the edge,
right.
they get rich. And honestly, when we go over the edge, they still end up getting rich somehow. I have no idea how, but they still end up getting rich.
They still.
But look, so you guys are right about all that, but you will never, ever convince the people in Washington. People in Washington to this day believe that all of the polls are wrong. That Bernie Sanders is less likely. This will scare them into supporting Hillary more.
Yes.
Okay? No, but
Probably, yeah.
Yes.
You're like, wait a minute. Okay, you think she's not going to get indicted. No one in Washington thinks she's going to get indicted, and there's good reason to believe that now with late breaking news, etc. But there's an FBI investigation on your candidate. She's going to be deposed within 2 weeks, okay, by the FBI. She's going to be questioned by the FBI in 2 weeks, deposed 8 weeks later in a separate civil trial, right? And right now she's neck and neck with this madman, with this monster, okay? And she's the most unfavorable candidate the Democratic Party has ever had, okay, going into a presidential election. But everyone in Washington is convinced, well, obviously she's the better candidate. And Bernie Sanders, who doesn't have any of those problems, grabs all of the independents. The only way that Donald Trump can win is if he wins independents. But Bernie Sanders does better, much better with independents than he does. She does worse with independents than Trump does.
Yep.
And he's got a double-digit lead. And every moron in Washington is absolutely convinced, no, you don't go with the guy with a big lead. You go with the person with the big unfavorables. You go with the one with the FBI investigation. You go with the one that's almost tied with the dumbest, craziest person we've ever seen run, right? She's tied with Trump in a poll.
That's unbelievable.
But every single person in Washington believes Hillary's the better candidate, not Bernie. Because they're so wedded to that system. And no matter what happens, even if you're risking an epic worldwide economic collapse, they can't have Bernie. Bernie would raise their taxes.
Yeah.
They can't have him. They can't have him because he won't serve them. He'll serve us. So they can't have it, even under any circumstance. And you almost can't get a circumstance worse than this.
Yeah.
So they're going to, but Cenk, don't you know in the general election, the Republicans are going to call Bernie a socialist, unlike they did to every goddamn Democrat that's run since FDR.
Including Obama right now.
Right now, still calling him a socialist, first of all, the Republican nominee is still calling him a Kenyan, right? Still asking for his long-form birth certificate, wants to see his college records. They're still doing that to the guy. So and he's black, and his middle name is Hussein. Yeah. So I am not afraid of what they're going to say about the cleanest candidate that's run in my lifetime.
Except for Lincoln Chafee.
Except for Lincoln Chafee. Come on, it was his first day.
Never had a scandal.
Come on, his first day. I'm telling you, right? So that's why that doesn't make any sense. So, they're going to say socialism, and then he's just going to crumble. Barack Obama didn't crumble. In fact, right now, his favorability is at the highest it's ever been. So they might call him names. Now, let me ask you a question. Sheldon Adelson came out recently and said he was okay with Trump. Do you see him switching like the Koch brothers when they were saying, "Hey, I kind of would go for Hillary"?
Yeah, I do. So we'll talk about it in the next.
Or donating to both.
Yeah, in one of the next stories because it's perfectly relevant to that. Yeah. But even if Adelson's enough of a madman not to get freaked out by this, and he might be because he's really eccentric, right? But any hedge fund guy, anybody working in the financial industry at all, no matter how hardcore right-wing conservative they are, no matter how much they want their taxes to be 0%, will look at that statement and go, oh, no. Oh, I didn't expect that. Wow. Because it does two things. It says, One, this guy is super dangerous. If he gets anywhere near the White House, he will ruin us all, okay? And two, oh my God, I didn't know he didn't know anything.
Yeah.
Right?
Like everyone knows this thing that you can't default because of the fiscal cliff. We all know about this.
Him and Ted Cruz don't know.
I mean, Ted Cruz at least knows. He pretends not to know.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Right now, you know what Ted Cruz is doing right now? He's in front of a whiteboard with a magic marker planning out his hand gestures for the rest of the day.
So, okay, I'll end this segment on that note because we got to go. We got at least two more great stories for you guys. I tweeted this from the plane. Every once in a while, in the last 3 days or so, I'll go, oh yeah, Ted Cruz lost, and it'll bring a smile across my face, and I'll be happy for like the next 5 minutes.
Yeah.
God, that guy's the worst. Anyway, although it turns out maybe not. Maybe he's the worst.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, quick break. When we come back, is Hillary Clinton going to get indicted? That is not a simple question. That has a lot of twists and turns. We're going to tell you all about it. We're going to cover it, I think, better than anyone else will. We're going to give you the honest assessment of all the upsides and downsides of why she might or might not get indicted. And then it turns out Hillary Clinton is going after Jeb Bush's donors, okay? I think you might have a thing or two to say about this. Of course, get the full show on tytnetwork.com/join and come right back. All right, back on the Young Turks. Harrison Kramer writes in, Cenk, Jimmy, and John always make me smile. Nothing like a TYT power panel after a long day. Thanks for telling the truth. Wait till you get a load of Anna, Jimmy, and Cenk. Even better.
Damn.
Okay.
John under the bus.
Okay. Yeshua Espila writes in, Hillary Clinton loses data and runs for office while whistleblowers like Snowden are treated as traitors. Hi there, hashtag double standard. Yeshua, that's exactly what we were just talking about during the break. This is a very long story, but the CIA screwed up and accidentally gave Iran plans for how to make a nuke. Oops. Okay, so the people who did that, of course, not under investigation. Everybody's totally fine. There was a whistleblower who let people know about it, going to jail. Okay, but Clinton not going to jail. The people who just leaked from the State Department, telling all the press, telling CNN, telling the Washington Post that Hillary Clinton, they don't have strong evidence against her. There's no whistleblower investigation of them. That is so weird. It's almost like there's a double standard. So frustrating. Okay, members of the day. Barbara Carmody. Barbara, you're leader of the free world, member number 1333. And member number 1334 is Wilhelm Bone, or Bone. Okay, sorry, Will. Okay, but you are also leader of the free world. tytnetwork.com/join, okay? Even my Uber driver's doing it. Did you see? I was talking about it in the first segment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my Uber driver today driving back from the airport. She's like, "Oh, Cenk, good to meet you. I'm a member of the site. She gives $10 a month, like everybody does. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I had calls to make and I had emailing to do, and I put my phone away and I said, "You're my boss, so give me what you got.
I love
Let
that.
me know what to do."
I love that. We're currently in the process of setting up our next executive producer meeting. There's this executive producer level of membership, and they get to have quarterly calls with us. So I'm going to be in the next call. I was in the last call, and I love it.
Yeah. tytnetwork.com/join. Let me say one other thing about Jane.
Wait a minute. Did your Uber driver is Jane?
Yes.
Is that her name?
Yeah.
And she's your boss?
Yes.
And did she tell you to give me a raise?
No, she didn't mention that.
It's so weird.
Yeah, that is weird. If she had said it.
I know, that's the weird thing.
I'll explain more about the Uber drivers in another post game we do next week, because I have a ton of Uber driver stories, some of which I've already put on Facebook, like Two Wife Omar and the Steamer. But Jane.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, it is. It's that.
Oh.
Okay.
It's that.
Jane used to. It's
that. Hey, I'll eat for that thing with the guy at the place.
Anyway, you'll find out about it on the post games. Anyway, Jane apparently once cooked pot brownies with Jim Morrison.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. And she actually, right before their album came out, she didn't even know who he was, right?
Wow.
Okay, and she heard him playing, was so wowed by it that her and her husband decided to just give him $300 to support him before the album comes out. So she supported Jim Morrison and us. How's that for Prescient Jane.
Who does that? Who gives a musician before This is before Kickstarter.
Yeah.
This is before cell phones.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
You just go, hey, I think you need some money. You're a good artist. She did that.
He was he was doing a show 3 weeks before their first album came out at her husband's house. They're like playing bar mitzvahs and stuff. It wasn't a bar mitzvah, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The fucking Doors. But they didn't know they were the fucking
Doors
Doors
yet.
at the time.
Wow.
Like you don't know that it's not. You don't know that it's Jimmy fucking Dore, right?
That's right.
But you will. All right. Anyway, let's move forward now.
All right. As the prison industrial complex continues to grow, there are more and more industries that stand to profit off incarcerating people or taking advantage of the fact that they're behind bars. One example of that is how various prisons throughout the country have done away with person-to-person, face-to-face visitation and have substituted it with either video conferencing or calling people. So this is a pretty disastrous story because video chatting with people that are behind bars might make sense for someone who's in a different state or far away, but apparently prisons are just doing away with face-to-face visitation altogether. In fact, over 600 prisons in 46 states have some sort of video visitation system, and every year more of those facilities do away with in-person visitation. So this is disastrous because whether you know it or believe it or not, in-person visitation has a lot to do with recidivism. If an inmate has family members or friends that provide a support system for him or her, it's likely that that individual will remain behaved while they're behind bars, they'll get out, and it's less likely that they're going to come back to prison, okay? So there was a case of one woman trying to do a video conference with an inmate that was a friend of hers, and here's what she had to say about it. This happened at the Travis County Prison in Texas. It's just too much frustration to come down here, wait for an hour, and then get 25 minutes for a not-so-good call. I think the hassle is why people don't visit as much anymore. Go ahead.
So, first reading on about this story, as with most people, you get tricked into thinking that this might actually be a good thing because you're like, oh, they get to Skype in. And so sometimes your loved one will be serving time in a prison that's really far away. It takes you an hour to get there. Sometimes it's across many states. You couldn't possibly get there, right? So, and by the way, when they were pitching it to legislators, that's how they start the conversation, right? And in fact, in one case, as Mike.com explains in this article, they tricked one of the officials by saying, oh, yeah, no, totally. Of course, you can also visit. And then as soon as you've agreed, they're like, oh, no, if you read the fine print, you're not allowed to visit anymore. It's only the Skype calls. And, by the way, we're going to charge you an arm and a leg for those calls.
And that's where the prison industrial complex comes in. I mean, these aren't the regular telecommunications companies that we're dealing with, right? It's not Verizon or Sprint. These are specifically companies that work for prisons. And the way that they get these prisons to sign contracts with them is they offer kickbacks. Okay,
yeah,
so
officially.
Yeah, exactly. So here's what happens. There are three companies that dominate the prison communications business. There's Securius, there's Telmate, and Global Tel Link, also called GTL, the Verizon, ATL, and Sprint of jails, okay? So apparently a sweeping survey of families by the Ella Baker Center showed that more than 1 in 3 families goes into debt just to cover the costs of keeping in touch with their loved one. Of everyone pouring money into those systems, 87% are women. Okay, so they're trying to get in contact with their loved ones, and now that in-person visitation isn't available for all these prisons throughout the country, they have no choice but to pay these ridiculous fees, in some cases $1 per minute, just to communicate with these people. So that's a deterrent, right? If you can't afford it, you're not going to do it.
And a lot of the time, as you all know, it's not even necessarily that they mean badly by it. It doesn't work, right? And so you get the, and you'll drives you crazy, right? And then you think they've got good customer complaint line? They're like, yeah, dude, you're talking to a prisoner. Nobody in this society cares about prisoners. We treat them as less than human. No, I don't give a damn that you couldn't actually use it. I'm going to charge you $1 anyway. I got the entire government behind me because I'm going to do a kickback for them. So here's what we mean by kickbacks. They say it's not a bribe, and it doesn't go to an official, but it goes to cash-strapped local governments. They go, okay, now will make these. You'll allow us a monopoly, so nobody else can compete. I thought these guys were all in favor of free markets. What happened? When it comes to robbing us all blind, no, they don't care about the free markets. They love crony capitalism, right? And all the politicians go, yeah, sure, do that. Yes, they'll also get donations to the politicians. But then mainly they go, okay, now of the money we robbed from these folks, we're going to share a small percentage with you guys. So they'll get a couple $1 million back from the enormous profits they made. And then this local government goes, oh my God, that's $2 million. Or if it's a giant, county or region of a state like Texas, might be like $15 million. And then you get hooked on the $15 million. Now, they're making a hell of a lot more than that, and they're making it off the poorest people in the country. And not the prisoners. It's usually their loved ones, their moms, their wives, their girlfriends, because 87% of the time it's women, right? And then they got to go into debt, and then that vicious cycle kicks in. But hey, all the powerful people are making money.
Yeah, and not only is there the debt, there's the issue of recidivism. So let's take a look at the next graphic because it shows you just how much of an impact it has on debt, and then we'll get into the numbers on recidivism. So according to the research, about 24 million people, let's go to graphic 5, please. Okay, there we go. All right, so 2.4 million people are confined or incarcerated. 34% of families do go into debt to cover the cost of communicating, just simply communicating with these inmates. 87% of family members responsible are women, as we've mentioned, and $1 per minute is the typical cost of video visitation. There's also email communication that serves as an option in some prisons, and what they do is they force the person sending the email to pay for a digital stamp, almost as if it's in-person, real life postage. So it's a disaster, and apparently one of those lucrative things is not only the digital thing, it's also phone calls. So if you call on the phone, you'd have to pay per minute, similar to how you would do it with the video chat. And in some cases, it's more than $1 a minute. Now, the incredible anticipation and fulfillment of knowing they care enough to come can be the difference between you comporting with the rules and being more human and aware and knowing the consequences of your actions and being willing to moderate and understand them. That's according to one person who was behind bars for over 20 years for a crime that he committed. And he said, hey, the only thing that kept me going was my family visiting. That's the only thing that kept me well-behaved behind bars. That's the only thing that kept me away from going back to prison when I got out, having that support system available.
So I want to go back to graphic 5 because I want to give you those two stats at the bottom there that goes to the point of recidivism and what they do inside prisons. That's so important. After just one visitation, in-person visitation, there's a 13% reduced chance of committing new crime and 25% reduced chance of technical violations. So if they get the visitation, they're less likely to do crimes outside and commit violations inside prisons. So, by the way, one of the reasons that they give to do this is, we're going to save costs. If there's an in-person visitation, well, then you're going to need more security guards. This way you don't need as many security guards, we save costs. No. It turns out in reality, when you don't get visitations, because we're human beings, people get frustrated, especially as the screen goes, and then they get sent back into jail. And it turns out, based on studies, there are more violations and fights within the prisons, which, guess what? Cost more money. So at the end of the day, the prison has to pay more money because the number of incidents and punishment and security guards and fights and all that stuff goes up because you're not allowing them to have human contact with people that they love, right? But it's okay because the government made a little bit more money, the politicians got some contributions, and these private companies that have a monopoly made a ton of money. So who cares that we're grinding these people down into the ground and just crushing their will to live and their spirit? And then we're surprised that they act out and there's recidivism. Oh, who cares? But one last thing about that. Remember, the prison industrial complex doesn't go, oh, yeah, you're right, the downside is recidivism, but at least we got paid. No, they think that's one of the upsides.
Yeah.
Because recidivism means they're coming back into jail and then they make more money. Now, those are two separate issues because this could happen in a public prison as well. This, video messaging that we're talking about. And on that, but everybody's trying to make money off the slaves, prisoners, right? who are put in there for the very dangerous things, a lot of them for smoking marijuana, which our last 1, 2, 3 presidents have admitted to doing, right? But very dangerous, very dangerous. But if you're powerful, don't worry about it. If you're powerless, they're going to grind you and humiliate you and crush your spirit and make all the money off of you. And by the way, some of this video messaging, remember what I said in the beginning? Well, at least if you're really far away. No, yes, that happens sometimes. Other times, they make them drive to the prison and then do the video messaging from the other side of the wall. And on top of everything, guys, yes, they've committed crimes. That guy served 20 years, etc. But they're still human beings. We've lost sense of our common decency and humanity. And so, who cares? Who cares? Don't let them see their loved ones. And let me make it a little bit more real, because it's not in this story, but I always remember the story of the woman who had the 3 strikes, eventually got so bad that we made a big deal out of it. A lot of other people made a big deal out of it, and Obama eventually didn't pardon her, but commuted the rest of her sentence. Her ex-husband or boyfriend had planted drugs in her house and blamed it on her, and it was just easier to prosecute her, so they put her away for life, okay? So she finally got out, but after serving an enormously long period of time. And she had 3 kids. Jeez. The only thing that kept her going was every once in a while she'd get to hold her kids. And so she'd get to see them grow up. So she had a baby when they first put her away, okay? And by the way, the first 2 strikes were minor usage of drugs, like, oh, she smoked pot, like all of our presidents. She did this. And then, but she kept going, and she fought hard. She got a degree. You know, she did all the right things, and she got out. Now, because of the new way of sucking money out of the system and out of all of us, now they say, no, you're not going to get to see your kids. You're not going to get to hold your kids. You're not going to get to do any of that stuff because we got another buck to make.
So, Cenk, but this is, this is emblematic of our whole culture now, right? Because, I mean, this is what Dylan Ratigan was screaming about on MSNBC before he left, was that this is wealth extraction, right? So this is and not only that, these people don't build anything. They're not really providing a service. They're taking a service away from people and providing a substandard service for a big profit. So this is just, and look who you're extracting wealth from. You're extracting wealth from the poorest people in the country, like Cenk said. You're not extracting wealth from the wealthy. No one, fine, go have at it. Who cares? You're extracting wealth not only from the poorest people, but from the poorest people who have nothing to do with it. They're not even the criminal. They're the victim twice. Now their loved one's in prison. Now you're going to bankrupt them just to talk to their. It's really disgusting, but it's considered, hey, that's business. That's the way things are done today. And it's more of the demonization of the poor in America. So fuck them. Who cares? They're poor. Who cares about it? We'll charge them more to cash their checks, payday loans. We'll charge them back. Rich people get the lowest rates. They get but poor people, that's how they keep them poor. Anyway.
And, one other thing about that is that it's another form of taxation. And one of the victims here talks about that. And it just shifts the taxes from the rich to the poor and middle class and goes, okay, well, that $2 million or $15 million that the local county or government is going to make, well, they could have made that money from the local corporations that have business there. They could easily afford it where they make giant, giant profits. But no, we're not going to do that because they already paid off our politicians. Instead, we're going to take it from you. And then when you can't pay your debts, maybe we'll put you in prison and go through this whole thing again.
Yeah, and it's the perfect crime for corporations and politicians that are in favor of doing away with these visitations because no one cares about inmates, right? When you really think about it, even liberals, this is not a partisan issue. People think of inmates as throwaways. And so no one's going to raise their voice about this. No one's going to stir the pot. And that's the depressing part about it.
Okay. Look, I'm also a little bit guilty of this because in the past I've thought, look, man, there's 1,000 issues that we got to go tackle. Prisoners is not an overly sympathetic case for Americans. It's a tough issue, so let's prioritize the other things above that, right? Well, I'm done with that because for a number of reasons, including all the stories that Anna's brought to us and we've covered together in the second hour. Also in New York, I just saw this great guy give a speech about in New York how they've just turned it into a machine, right? Like we've seen in all these other states. But in New York, it's only one of only 2 states, I think North Carolina is the other, that at 16, they automatically try you as an adult. You can't smoke a cigarette until you're 21. You can't drink alcohol you can't have a beer until you're 21. But if you commit any violation, including smoking pot, at 16 you're an adult. You're an adult, and you're going to adult prison. You're going to Rikers Island.
It's amazing.
Right? And then
16 is not an adult.
Yeah, and then those prisons are enormously violent. And then they teach criminality, and it goes round and round and round. And now we know that Nixon's aide, Ehrlichman, said, yeah, obviously we started the war on drugs to get hippies and black people because they were our enemies. And to this fucking day, we're doing it anyway. The whole system it's not incidentally racist. It's built on racism, okay? And, sometimes we talk about, they go after liberals or whatever. In this case, under the war on drugs, the whole point was to target 2 sets of people, blacks and liberals, okay? So every day that you don't fight back against that system, you tolerate a gross, gross injustice. And I'm telling you that what I did wrong was because not only was the priorities off, but I need to take a longer, deeper look and see what I was thinking about those prisoners, right? And a lot of those prisoners, we are trained, especially, I grew up in a middle-class suburb, upper middle-class suburb, okay? We didn't think about prisoners. Prisoners were guilty. Prisoners were wrong. You don't think about them, right? But you read these stories.
They're just poor.
They're just 9 out of 10 times they're poor. Yes, of course there are bad guys, and of course we want to put them away, and we're not, I don't know if there are suckers like that out there, right? But we're not among them, right? We're not like, hey, let everybody go and give them flowers and let them ride off into the sunset with unicorns, right? No, but you don't realize they're not, like, a lot of these guys aren't the bad guys. They're just, did the same exact thing you did in your suburb, but they got crushed for it.
Yeah, they got specifically targeted for it.
Because the system's set up to target them and not you in the suburbs.
Exactly.
Right, we know the statistics that they don't do drugs at any higher rate, but they're incarcerated at a much higher rate. They're arrested at a much higher rate. Stop and frisk. They frisk more black guys than live in New York City. So, I mean, can you imagine if they stopped and frisked you in Culver City? Can you imagine that? People were stopping and frisking you for walking down the street. Like, what the F? We'd all be in jail at some point because they can put you in jail like when a cop pulls you over. They can find a violation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and here's where they're not going to do that: Rodeo Drive.
Of course not.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the reality. All right, let's keep going.
A jury in Texas has sentenced a 20-year-old man to 25 years in prison for his conviction of killing his prom date a few years ago. Now, at the center of this case is Eddie Herrera, who was 18 years old at the time, and the girl that he took to the prom was 17-year-old Jacqueline Gomez. Now, he claims that they were having rough sex and that she had asked him to choke her, and he complied. And then when he did that, apparently she had died, and he fell asleep next to her, woke up the next morning, and saw that she was dead. But there are twists to the story that are important to mention. Now, Herrera, then 18, told police that he and his mother worked together to rent the hotel room, get 2 bottles of whiskey, and at least 20 pills of a painkiller, hydrocodone. He told detectives that he and Gomez drank 1.5 bottles of whiskey and took most of the pills before having consensual sex.
What?
First of all, let me just say, if you are sharing 1.5 bottles of whiskey with someone and you're taking up to 20 painkillers, there is no consensual sex, okay? You are so inebriated, there's no way that you can consent to sex. But aside from that, I mean, what kind of mother gives someone painkillers?
So this is a really tough story, and it's tough on a lot of different fronts. One is that, of course, the obvious part is what Anna says. If you're a mom, what are you doing? What are you doing? Don't give 20 hydrocodones and a couple of bottles of whiskey to your kids. like, I get it. Sometimes people look the other way. They know what's going to happen in prom. I'm not asking you to be militant and be like, come in with binoculars and, you know, barge in and do all that stuff. But this is above and beyond. Okay, so that part's obvious. The non-obvious part is, what do you do? So, were they playing a choking game? Probably. I mean, the defense attorney makes a very good point. He's like, where's the motive? Why would he want to kill her? There's no motive at all. There's no intent to kill. And it's possible that while they were doing the choking thing, she passed out. And then because she passed out, she died later for other reasons from all the drugs and the alcohol. And in fact, the authorities said the cause of death was, quote, undetermined. So if I'm sitting on that jury and I go, it's undetermined, and you want me to say that this is murder, right? I can't, right? So
let me clarify one thing, though, that I think is important. He did not get tried for murder.
That's right.
He got tried for assaulting someone in a dating relationship, okay, which is also a felony, but it's a lesser charge than first-degree murder.
But if he had pushed her and or she had pushed him, either way, but no harm had come of it, you think they would have gotten 25 years? Of course not, right? He got the 25 years because she died.
Yeah.
And so if that's your daughter, you want punishment. I get it. We all get it, right? And you're not going to be happy with any story that he gives you. You're going to be furious. Okay. On the other hand, it doesn't seem like the kid meant to kill her, right? 25 years is a hell of a sentence. So that's why I say it's a super hard issue. I don't know what sentence I would have given him.
Yeah. I said, I don't know, but of course we weren't in the courtroom, but everything, but just from the story. First of all, how did they both not overdose? You can't take a bottle of whiskey and then you, I mean,
Bottle
was it
and
a
a half.
bottle? Was it a pint and a half or was it a fifth and a half? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know, but it's a hell of a lot of alcohol and drugs.
And then you mix Vicodin with it, and you're a teenager with no tolerance. I can't believe that, first of all, they were able to have sex. So if they can, according to the story, they consumed most of it before having consensual sex.
Yeah.
So I don't even know how you could have sex. I don't know. I don't know. It's 25 years seems excessive for somebody whose death is undetermined. How could that seems a little crazy?
Yeah, I agree that the sentence is very long. And I agree that it's a difficult story. I don't even really know how to approach it. The part of it that frustrates me the most is that an adult was willing to supply these teenagers with prescription painkillers. And so if you want to talk about harsh punishment, it should be directed at her more than anything.
Yes.
I know, but she didn't. Okay, so she broke a law because you're not supposed to give people under the age of 21 that stuff either. But, you know, that you're not going to give her 25 years. He was in the room. So, yeah, we're super pissed at her. But obviously, he's the one facing the harsh sentence here. But, yeah.
His life's over. It's done.
Of course it's over. And look, the part that is also frustrating, and I hate to harp on it, but it's true. If he was OJ, he would have gotten away with it. You know, if you had a good defense team and the cause of death is undetermined, you think you're going to get convicted, let alone 25 years, right?
That is
I mean,
unbelievable.
of course, the affluenza kid, right? So there 4 people died there, right?
Yeah.
Got away with it, right?
amazing.
But in this case, it appears to be consensual sex. Anna makes a good point. It can't really be, if they're that passed out, it can't really be consensual on either side,
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
But despite all that, this just seems out of whack. But the most important thing for me, actually, outside of what happened to Herrera in this case, is for all you guys out there, because this is something that's common now. People are choking each other while having sex. So when I first, no, I'm not kidding.
I know,
It's
I know.
definitely
I
a
know.
thing, yeah.
So when I first heard about it, I couldn't believe it. And I thought, no, it's probably the guy telling me this. He's in a small class of people, and he thinks everybody's doing it, but he's full of crap, because that's so nuts. There's no way everybody's doing that, right? And then I found out, no, I heard it from somebody else, and I thought, like, I'm like an old man, and everybody's now choking each other, like, it's not, like, hey, it's not really fun sex unless you're choking each other. And then all the comedians started doing jokes about it, because it's so common that everybody's like, hey, you're not really having fun unless somebody's getting choked, right? And so, no, I know it is. And I said it at the time, and now it happened, right? But this is just the beginning. Yeah, of course you're gonna freaking die if you choke the other person, and especially because there'll be drugs and alcohol, and somebody will do it for a little too long, or somebody will pass out afterwards, and you won't notice because you're drunk. I mean, don't choke each other. I know, I'm grandpa, and some of the people watching this will laugh, and they'll go, they're so,
Who cares
they're
if they
so uncool. They don't even choke each other while having sex, right?
Oh,
I'm not kidding. They will. A lot of people watching this will go, they're such dorks, okay? No, that's just one stupid case. It's not going to happen to me. I know how to choke somebody in the middle of sex.
I know how.
Right?
Drunk.
No, don't do it. It's stupid. It's super stupid. And apparently a lot of people are doing it. We're probably not going to be able to convince them, but all right, just know 25 years. Look, for the guy, don't do it because you might get 25 years. For the woman, don't let him do it because you might die.
Yeah.
That's what happens when your oxygen is cut off.
So this is related to the autoerotic asphyxiation, correct? Right. So that became a thing about who was that celebrity who died?
The Kung Fu guy.
The Kung Fu guy, David Carradine.
David Carradine, yeah.
Right. So that was he was the autoerotic asphyxiation.
Yeah.
And then you think that would scare people off this stuff?
I think, look, this is just my guess, okay? I don't have any evidence in front of me to prove that this is happening, but my educated guess is that we're living in a country right now that's afraid to talk to kids about sex, right? We're afraid to educate them about it. We're afraid to have open dialogue about it. And so where do young people in red states especially get their education about sex? Through porn. And for people who are educated about sex, you know that that's just a fantasy, right? You know that that's just lighting and actors and actresses. If you're porn educated, you're going to think that that type of behavior is what's expected when you're having sex.
Yeah, now there's a thing called porn educated in this country. And look, maybe if look, honestly, I wouldn't have known if my kids were older and this applied to them, I wouldn't have known to tell them not to do this because I don't think the older generation knows that this is going on at all, right?
Yeah,
so like, who thinks to tell them? Oh, by the way, don't choke anybody while having sex. Word to the wise, right?
Be safe on prom, son. Don't choke anybody to death. All right.
Okay. But apparently nowadays you got to give that speech and you got to make it stick because likely they won't listen to you. They'll think, old man dorks. They don't have any fun at all. They don't come this close to death while having sex.
You're supposed to choke the chicken, not your date.
Okay.
All right, next.
We're going to take a quick break.
No, I want to keep going.
Okay, all right, God
Let's
bless.
do one more before we go to break.
All right,
I'm ready for
charge.
some news. All right. North Carolina Republicans vowed to defy the federal government in its allegations that the state is breaking federal civil rights laws. Now, the state's leading Republican lawmaker, House Speaker Tim Moore, told reporters in Raleigh that North Carolina would not be bullied into meeting the U.S. Justice Department's Monday deadline to change the law. So the federal government looked into North Carolina's anti-LGBT law, which of course specifically focuses transgender individuals and makes them use the bathroom that they do not identify with. And the federal government decided, hey, you know what? You guys are actually breaking some federal laws, civil rights laws. Now, the Republicans are saying, we don't care. The RNC told us we can do whatever the hell we want. So the Republican National Committee urged state legislators in January to resist federal policies that allow transgender people to use restrooms of their choice at public schools.
And Trump is embarrassing to them. Trump is the one who's embarrassing them. He's the one that, can you believe this guy? Where's the queer? I want to punch him. What's wrong? That Trump is so embarrassing. What's with these? That's the whole thing. It's like, who are you pretending to not like? This is who they are. This is it. This is unbelievable. This is 2016. Ugh.
So Oxford, Alabama was a city that decided to take these anti-trans laws and go overboard, okay? So they were going to, if they caught anyone, they would give them a $500 fine and up to 6 months behind bars. And then they decided, oh, you know what? Actually, we are going to reverse this law that the city council passed because it breaks federal laws and they're going to come after us and it's a bad idea. So at least they were smart enough to realize, hey, we're bigoted assholes, but we don't want to pay any consequences for it. So we're going to reverse this law. In the case of North Carolina, the Republicans don't care that they're bigoted assholes and they might face some severe consequences for it.
The funny thing is, to Jimmy's point, I sometimes talk to Republicans now, and if you call them racist, they get super offended. or bigoted or homophobic or whatever. They really pretend to be upset about it,
Yes.
right? And I was on C-SPAN and I called Trump a clown, and it was like fairly light touch from me, right? And like the caller was like, oh, "How dare you?" Come on.
Well, it was C-SPAN.
Okay, yeah, I hear you. So now that Trump is saying, the dog whistle stuff with a human whistle, and people can, hear him saying attacking Mexicans, Muslims, blacks, etc., they get to say like, "Well, I would never," right? Lindsey Graham's going around the country, Republican senator from South Carolina, saying that he's got the vapors, right, as Jon Stewart used to say, right? And
I do declare.
That's right. And so no, you guys built the party on racism. I interviewed Governor Jim Gilmore. You should check that out on TYT interviews whenever we put it up. He was in the race. He was one of the 17 running for president, right? And he was the former governor of Virginia. And he was like aghast, like, Republicans and racism? By golly gee, I don't know what you're talking about. He had to, when he was governor in the 1990s, pass a law saying, when we're celebrating Martin Luther King's birthday, we should just do it by itself and not in conjunction with Confederate generals. Okay, because Republicans in Virginia, all the way to the 1990s, said, if you're going to celebrate that Martin Luther King, and I'll be polite here, well, then you have to also salute the Confederate generals who were trying to keep slaves. Okay? What racism? I don't know what you're talking about. Bigotry? Well, I would never, right? And here they are. They're still doing it to this day. No, I don't care what you think you are. I don't care what you... Freedom? No. You don't get to have freedom. I get to have the freedom to discriminate against you. So if you're trans, you're not going to go into the bathrooms you want, etc. Now, I know we've discussed this in the past, but I was just at a YouTube Creator Summit for the top 100 YouTube creators, not a big deal. And one of them is Gigi Gorgeous, and she's trans, right? And to her, she matches up to her name. She's gorgeous. According to North Carolina, this blonde woman that would have to go into the men's bathroom. Okay, and if she did, all the men would be like, "What's she doing in here?" Okay,
I don't know
actually,
if they would react that way.
Probably they'd react in a different way. Those same North Carolina Republicans would be like, "Yes," right?
They'd be like, "Hey, I got a wide stance over here."
Right. But it makes no sense. She's a woman. She looks like a woman. She's a woman in every way, and you want her to go into the men's bathroom. And then women, the people who are born women who actually identify as males, and you cannot separate from males now.
Yeah.
We've shown pictures in the past. They'd have to walk into the women's bathroom. Then you'd have a federal emergency on your hands. They'd be like, "Oh, my, there's a guy in the women's bathroom. We knew it, the liberals, the perverts." No, you put him in there. You see what I'm saying?
I know, it is kind of incredible, though, because in an effort to keep men out of the women's bathroom, they're allowing men into the women's bathroom. They're such fucking idiots.
Think of it like that.
It's almost as if bigots are stupid.
It's almost if. So when Republicans get outraged, when I'm talking to them about when you do the accusation of racism in the party, like, I always say, well, then why did 2 out of the last 3 chairmen of the RNC apologize for the Southern strategy? That's not me, that's them. Mm-hmm. And what we all know what the Southern strategy is, it's a racist strategy invented by Nixon to appeal to stoke racism in the whites to get them to vote for them. So here we are, and you have Donald Trump and people, and they're still doing this. This is out in broad daylight. They do this. You're suppressing the vote of minorities coast to coast because you care more about winning than you do care about the country, democracy, or the right to vote. Right? So you're doing that, and that's blatant racism. You're doing this shit all over the place. You've did the Southern strategy for over 2 generations, and now you go, how did this Donald Trump? I don't know. Like Eric Erickson, the second biggest misogynist in the country, is now pissed off that there's a bigger one, and he's going to be the Republican nominee. So it's just crazy to see them all try to distance themselves while they continue to do this stuff. We're suppressing the vote across the country, suppressing homosexuals, minorities. They still can't get. It's like they are stuck in the 1950s, and they're going to hang on. And they were told after Mitt Romney's loss, Stop doing this with minorities. Stop doing this with Hispanics. They told themselves that, and they still can't help it. It's who they are. It's like when they impeached Bill Clinton. They knew it was going to cost them politically, and they still did it anyway.
Immigration reform. They knew they should have done immigration reform, but they couldn't help themselves because they hate Hispanics. Okay. Oh, I know. I hope I hope you didn't faint.
Yeah.
So offended. So offended.
This is a two-party system.
Okay, and by the way, I know not all Republicans are racist. Some of you are just greedy. So, no problem. I hear you, man. Some people just want lower taxes and they don't care about anything about else, so they'll look the other way on racism. So if that makes you feel better, congratulations. Okay, we got to take a quick break here. When we come back, are the Kardashians responsible for communism in Cuba? There are some people who are kind of making that argument.
The answer just may surprise you.
When we come back.